Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you could all please remain standing. Recently, there were 2 deaths in the Greenwich community. One is the brother of our former First Selectman, John Margonot, and the other more recent passing was that of the father of our state rep, Fred Camillo. So if we can please observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Today is the Tuesday, February 16th, our regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. The agenda is light. As I like to say, the calm before the storm. Most of our heavy lifting this month is done by the Budget Committee and all of your good work in terms of getting the questions into the Budget Committee. We figure the first selectman will be on the hot seat for the next few days with the departmental reviews and capital budgets, so we figured we'll give him an early night tonight. That being said, Mr. Clerk, routine applications.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move PR3, Parks and Recreation. This is a request of conditions, release of conditions for $100,000 for the golf course administration building. And CD3, Community Development, an additional appropriation of $4,444 for UMC CCI building rehab.
It's moved by Mr. Pellegrino.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mason. I should also note at this time that Mr. Kelly had informed me that he was unable to make tonight's meeting. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 11-0-0. We have no non-routine applications this month, in part because departments are working within their budgets and meeting those expectations. Although after this snowfall, again, I'm not sure that our snow budget is on track or not, but we'll see come springtime. Item 3 now comes before us, the Assessor's Report. In the audience, we have Ted Gwartney and Bob Shipman, our Town Assessor and Assistant Assessor. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Board. Briefly, my report is before you. We've completed the grand list work for the past year. We're now working intensely on the revaluation and accepting the applications for the senior credit program and the senior deferral program. I'm glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions for the assessor relative to his report? Just to let, I'll take the opportunity now to simply indicate and thank Nancy Barton. As you all know, Nancy joins me on a monthly basis with the finance department and with the assessor. So we met with the assessor this month to go over his evaluation. That will be brought before this body in March for approval, as well as the reevaluation. The revaluation team also meets with Ted on a monthly basis, and that will continue throughout the reval process. Questions for Mr. Gwartney? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the assessor's report?
So
Moved by Ms. Tarkington, second by Mr. Pellegrino. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Just to confirm, Mr. Gwartney will be meeting at 8:30 tomorrow with the reval team in your office. Great, thank you. Item 4 now comes before us, BET committees and special project team reports. You should have received, and I think we still, it's like the snow, it keeps coming, written reports. There were several this month. The hope also is that these written reports will become the standard in terms of assignments to the extent that work is actually done over that given month. you should have in front of you several of these special project team reports and committee reports, and the hope is that we would then have discussion on some of them when they warrant. So, does anybody have any questions or comments relative to any of the reports that's before us tonight? I will say this about Project Renew. Obviously, we had the presentation by HDG. I had a follow-up conversation with the chairman, Dave Ormsby. We have a meeting scheduled for the 23rd, I believe, the special project team dealing with Project Renew, in the hopes of coming up with a process by which constructive criticism, suggestions, opinions, thoughts on Project Renew can be discussed, vetted, so that that project can continue in a timely manner, because we do anticipate that in around the April timeframe, we will receive a resolution from Nathaniel Witherell seeking approval to then be forwarded to the RTM, I think in the June timeframe, for approval of Project Renew. And so it's important that if you haven't done so already, to not only read the final report and the cash flows from HDG, but also then any of the reports coming from Mr. Pellegrino on the building committee, Ms. Tarkington as the liaison, and from the special project team as they come forward. So rest assured that right after we pass the budget, we will dive headfirst into Project Renew. Mr. Campbell.
Members might be looking for a POCD, a Plan of Conservation and Development report, and there isn't one in the package. Mr. Simon and I are on that committee, and it has met 3 times, and there is not a report because I think it's our opinion that we are still really in our organizational mode. That committee will be meeting. Actually, its scope does not stop at the end of 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, or it just kind of goes on. But I expect that after one additional meeting, that we will have a report for this committee. So.
The next meeting is on Monday at 4:30.
Other comments or questions regarding the reports? Okay. Item 5 now comes before us, the Comptroller's report.
Good evening. You all have a copy of my Comptroller's report. I'll answer any questions at this time.
Questions for the Comptroller?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to, not a question, but I'm going to refer to the tax collection review analysis. So we met this afternoon, the audit committee that is, met this afternoon with the tax collector, and he indicated to us that there's no provisions in state statute for sending out the second notices for people to receive or to pay their taxes in the second half of the annual cycle. So that even though those reminder notices were sent out late, it's not covered by state statute, and it's basically a convenience for residents as they do so. And he did make that point extensively during our discussions with him.
Fair enough. As all the BET members know, I had sent out a memo to him inquiring about that as a result of receiving several constituent, I won't call them complaints, but concerns regarding the fact that the former tax collector had instituted the process of issuing the second half bills. And there was the fact that these bills were later than were normally sent out raised some concern. I thought the tax collector did an excellent job in responding to my inquiry, and I guess followed up with your committee. So that's fine.
And to follow up to that a little bit, is that they're meeting tomorrow. He's meeting tomorrow with the printer, and actually it's a subcontracting situation that caused that delay. The printing was done actually apparently in Maine, where it was subcontracted by the printer who has the contract to produce these invoices, and they're meeting with the contractor tomorrow to have greater control over where the billings are actually printed.
Mr. Simon.
No, I was only going to say that if we're going to go to the trouble and expense of sending out the second bill which we do as a courtesy to our taxpayer. We should do it earlier because people in Greenwich like to pay their bills earlier, and we would be able to collect the money sooner. If we're not going to bother with it, then we don't have to spend the money. It's not cheap.
Fair enough. Other comments concerning the comptroller's report? I'd also note at this time that Ms. Barton and I did meet with the comptroller sort of separately or within the course of other meetings, and we also will be presenting a evaluation to the full BET in March. Is there a motion to approve the comptroller's report? Moved by Mr. Simon, second by Mr. Pellegrino. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 11-0-0. Item 6 now comes before us, acceptance of treasurer's report. Questions? As you look at the treasurer's report, obviously also looking at the monthly reports that are received to the Budget Committee regarding revenue, it's still showing obviously a significant shortfall in the budget to actual of interest income. Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report? Moved by Mr. Norton, second by Mr. Pellegrino. I'm a little slow tonight, I apologize. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? 11-0-0. The minutes from the January 25th, 2010 meeting now come before us. Moved by Mr. Simon. Second by Ms. Tarkington. Questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Sorry, hold on. Who's abstaining? Ms. Barton and Mr. Norton? And Mr. Mason?
Yes. I left her.
Oh. 803.
Be like 8, 1.5, 1/2.
Officers' report now comes before us. Do any of the officers have any other comments?
No.
This month, I met with the PTA Council, discussing the budget process and where we are and the public hearings that are scheduled relative to the budget. I should also note that I've attempted to use the town's third-party server in terms of establishing a Town of Greenwich email account. I have not had a very good experience to date. I still don't have a password. I've had now at least 4 phone calls, and I will work through this process until I am assured that it is a process that if you log on, you will not have the similar experience. And the hope, again, is so that we all have Greenwich email accounts, especially for purposes of FOI, so that you can conduct town business using a town email account. The RTM has shifted in that direction. I don't know if maybe just I'm having the snafu or not, but it has not been a good experience, and like I said, I still do not have an account. That being said, I'm working towards resolving this with the vendor, and then we can move on. I should also note that over the course of this past month, I have appointed Nancy Barton as the chairman of our law committee. Ms. Barton, the committee stays the same of Ms. Barton and Mr. Campbell, but Ms. Barton will be the chairman of the committee. Once again, all moving towards the notion of responsibility, accountability, so that not only do our special project teams and standing committees have chairman, so too will the law committee have a chairman. The other, as I indicated in the January meeting, I have, in fact, reconstituted our Policies and Procedures Committee. So for those historians in the audience, it's back. I have appointed Bill Finger as its chairman. It's going to be a two-person committee, and Joe Pellegrino will be the other member of the committee. Their committee will be tasked with first looking at the policies and procedures that we've already instituted, making sure that they are current, taking a look at the handbook, and combining those two documents so that we have one BET document. And then as policies are developed, if they're developed over the course of the next term, the standing committees will develop the policies on the merits, and then the Policies and Procedures Committee will then review it for formatting and context within the other policies, making sure that they're consistent. So I'm hopeful that we will have a much better document in terms of combining the two. I've already received comments from BET members regarding our handbook, which is outdated and quite frankly has information in there that is wholly inaccurate. So we're working towards that, and we hope to have that process move along, but probably not until well after the budget process. There is no old business to come before us. Item 10 now, under new business, vote and approve a resolution concerning the OPEB trust. With that, I will call upon Mr. Pellegrino, the chairman of the OPEB Ad Hoc Committee.
Would you like the resolution read into the record?
No, I think everyone should have received a packet of the resolution. If you could just describe it, we have it, and I think Maria, most importantly, has it. So,
The OPEB Ad Hoc Committee met, and we resolved that the process of reviewing the current members of the OPEB trust should be undertaken by the Investment Committee, at least annually. We also resolved that any need for a new member of the OPEB Trust Board should be originated by the Investment Committee. And finally, we resolved that it was a preference that not BET members be members of the OPEB Trust Board.
it's been moved by Mr. Pellegrino,
Second.
second by Mr. Simon. So I will start the discussion only to the extent that I promised a former member of this board, Mr. Stone, to bring this up, who Mr. Stone was, and not to put words in his mouth, but was a staunch advocate that at least one member of the OPEB Trust Board be a member of the BET. I certainly do not share that same sentiment, but certainly people should be aware that Mr. Stone, who certainly did a lot of work in this area, did in fact think that was a worthy issue. I myself believe that the OPEB Trust Board is advisory to the BET, and the reason we have the board that's separate and apart from the BET is to gain that knowledge from the citizens of the town who have skills that, quite frankly, either we don't necessarily have or just a different approach, and have the time to commit directly to one issue. So I support the OPEB Trust the Ad Hoc Committee in their recommendation. Further comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? 11-0-0.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Norton.
The Investment Advisory Committee is scheduled to meet on next Monday, the 22nd, at 8 o'clock, I believe in the Evaristo Room. And at that time, we will review this document, and it'll be an agenda item for the purposes of implementing what is recommended by the Ad Hoc Committee. And I want to comment that I support completely the recommendation for this resolution. I think that both the BET and the OPEB committee is best served by having civilians who are able to vet the choice and the selection of the investments which are included with OPEB, and having responsibility for that ultimately rest with the BET. I think the division of labor between the BET acting as in effect oversight and and the trust board members serving as the vetters and selectors of the various investments serves everybody in our best interest.
Thank you. Under new business, if I can briefly talk about this week. We did vote. 11-0-0. As everyone knows, tomorrow we have capital. It'll start with Public Works at 9. It'll go through to lunch, and then starting at around 1, Fleet, followed by Parks and Rec, and then the discussion about funding constraints, options, essentially the question regarding our capital budget and bonding. Thursday, we have operating departmental reviews. Right now, the Budget Committee is scheduled to discuss the budgets of with the First Selectman, IT, Law, Senior Center, Fire Department, GEMS, Fleet, Public Works, and Parks and Recreation, all on Thursday. And then on Friday, Police, Nathaniel Witherell, our healthcare budget, social services, library, parking services, and then everyone's favorite, fixed charges. So obviously for BET members, you've seen this schedule. Obviously, your attendance is always helpful to the Budget Committee. For those from the public that wish to attend, it's a loose schedule only to the extent that we really can't predict how long the conversations will take place. If you do have a question and would like to attend, if you're watching from home, certainly because you're not in the audience today, call the Finance Department, and they will be able to direct you and have this list and let you know where we are in the process, and hopefully you can attend that portion of the hearing that you wish to attend.
Mr. Chair?
Mr.
Chairman,
Norton.
we met this afternoon in our review, the Audit Committee's review with Parking Services Director Alan Corey, who indicated that he will not be able to be presenting to the Budget Committee on Friday because he's leaving Thursday evening to fly someplace, and he's requesting a change be made in his presentation to Thursday.
Well, Mr. Corey should contact
He was.
the Finance Department and the Chair of the Budget Committee to set that up. That'd be great. Lastly, I did receive a request for the public schools regarding their Harris survey. It's a meeting for February 24th at 1 o'clock at Havemeyer. Unfortunately, I cannot attend. And so if you're interested in that meeting and attending to represent the BET regarding supplemental questions for the Harris survey, let me know. I'll be here tomorrow, and if you have any interest in attending that, let me know. A few people have expressed an interest, essentially, if no one else would like to attend. So, if you do wish to attend this meeting, that would help me out and help the BET out in representing the BET. So, February 24th at 1 p.m. Let me know. Is there any other new business that comes before us tonight? Okay, that's good. Everyone can rest up for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Thank you.